Welcome to Phil and Ted's Sexy Boomer Show. I'm Ted Bonnet.
And I'm Phil Proctor. And boy, it's such a beautiful day out there.
Isn't it?
We should remove the ceiling here. Or maybe it'll fall in during the show.
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah, no, it's nice to see that there is actually some sun to be had.
In sunny California.
Oh, my goodness. It was so beautiful at the beach yesterday. Just one of those the perfect air where it's just delicious. You want to drink the air. It's so nice. And that's what makes L.A. so great.
David Osman used to call the smog here Hitler.
How's that?
He just say Hitler's really thick today. He moved up to Santa Barbara to get away from it.
Really?
Yeah.
And then he moved to...
He's on Whidbey Island.
Now he's off continent.
He's a would-be on Whidbey.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, he's still doing very well. He's directing stuff, and of course we're in touch with doing Firesign Theater stuff whenever we can. So
good.
Anyway,
and we have a really interesting show today. We're going to talk about the movie business.
That's right.
And specifically the Laemmle movie business, which is a fascinating story from the origins of Hollywood to the existential threat to theater exhibition that remains today here in Hollywood, in the Los Angeles area, certainly with the Laemmle Theaters, and which is indicative of theaters everywhere, and not just movie theaters, as you know.
No, the Mark Taper Forum, a place where I acted many, many times in the early days, is not having a season. They've canceled their season for next year. Can't afford it.
And they're one of the...
It's the subscribers. You see, the subscribers who stopped coming because of COVID haven't come back.
Yeah, and the Center Theater Group is one of the premier theater groups.
God, they were
the
just
fact
the
that
best.
they have to shut down.
You know, Phil Austin and I were both in Musica by John Guare. And at that time, this was the 70s, I guess. It was absolutely thrilling. People loved coming to that theater because it's a thrust stage, so you have an intimate feeling. And as an actor, you really feel like you're close to the audience. You're part of an experience.
I've been to a number of productions this season, and
apparently you saw a production there now.
The Transparent the musical. We went to opening night, and it wasn't full. It was about three-quarters full on opening night.
Wow!
And
so they only opened it a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah. But everybody was very open because it was the beautiful intelligentsia of the queer scene of Los Angeles came out for this production, and it was great. It was was a throwback to San Francisco in the 70s. Just
who is your beard?
My beard?
For that.
Oh, Sarah Spitz.
Sarah Spitz, who has been on this KCRW.
Yes, my dear friend. And
my dear friend too, from the past.
It's telling about what's happening, and of course it's a new normal now post-COVID, and I think there are other factors at work too, because first of all, cost. Theater is expensive now, and also in L.A., traffic's a drag. I mean, if you live on the West Side and you want to go see a show at the Theater Center on a Friday night, it's a commitment. And a lot of people have just said no. And that's terrible. What we're going to talk about today is, more specifically, is the movie business, which is still struggling to recover. And we're going to talk about that really from a personal perspective. And I'd like to welcome our guest now, Greg Laemmle, who is now the operator, owner, and leader of truly one of God's gifts to Los Angeles, which is the Laemmle movie theater chain.
They're not afraid of subtitles.
No, they're not. Hi, Greg.
Hey there. Great to be here, guys.
Thanks for joining us today.
Well, you're actually not here. How can you be in two places at once when you're not anywhere at all, Greg?
Well, I am sorry not to be in the studio with you, but happy to be on the air.
You're in our ears, and that's really very nice. You're up in Seattle, right?
That is correct. That's where I'm living these days, although I spend a lot of time back in L.A. as much as I can.
Good.
And that's part of this story. Like, there's a wonderful documentary called Only in Theaters, which is the story of you and your family's business and the struggles that you're facing keeping the theaters open.
That's right.
And we're going to have Raphael Sbarge on later on in the show.
He's the director and creator
this.
of it. Raphael's a good friend of mine from the Antaeus Theater Company.
Yes. Greg, thank you so much for joining us. What is art house cinema?
Well, I guess art house cinema can be defined as, in some respects, as anything that isn't, part of the Hollywood studio circuit. there was a time when the studios not only produced and distributed their films, but they actually owned the movie theaters where those films played. And, there was a great incentive for them to keep their own films on screen, especially at a time when when playing in movie theaters was the only revenue source for those films.
That's right.
Um, and films that were produced or distributed outside of that system had a hard time finding a home.
Mm-hmm. And inverse to that, which we're going to talk about too, is your family history, and is it your great grand uncle Carl Laemmle?
I think that's what he was my great grandfather's first cousin.
Okay,
Oh, wow.
So he's a cousin. Anyway, he's the founder of Universal Studios, and this goes back to the very earliest of the 20th century. And what a story his story is, and he started in the theater business. After several failed businesses, attempts to make something of himself in the clothing business, and it was these failures that really informed him. And one day he happened to notice what was at the time a Nickelodeon. He saw a lineup of people paying to go into a building and coming back out with nothing in their hands. Yeah, and he thought, what a business plan. and then, to simplify the story, he got into the theater business, but he was very difficult to find content because at the time there were 7 to 10 minute movies being made, Nickelodeons, and he needed more product. Then he decided to acquire films and then rent them back to other theaters. So he started the first film exchange. And then when that was still not enough content, he decided to start making movies. And that eventually became Universal Pictures. And in the process, he elevated it from sort of a look down upon Nickelodeon to more of a cultural experience.
And I understand he built the studios on a former chicken ranch. Okay, so that's why Universal is plucking the tourists now.
See, this is way more than Greg thought he was getting into.
Sorry, Greg.
Is that a fair characterization? Because it's similar to what you're up against all these years later.
Yeah, no. I mean, that is absolutely a fair, recap of his trajectory in the business. Although it also included a fight with Thomas Edison.
That's right.
Over whether the movie making process and the patent that Edison had placed on the movie-making process was valid.
That was the known as the trust, and that was Edison's attempt to control everything that was produced from his camera that he invented. And your uncle tried everything to evade him. He even moved the company to Cuba in the early 1900s, which didn't kind of work out too well for the employees. But he took it on. Did it go up to the Supreme Court?
Yes, all the way to the Supreme Court.
And what did he accomplish?
Well, by proving the case that the patent was not valid, it changed the economics of movie making, and really led to the flourishing. Now, all these companies that started in the wake of Laemmle's company, got established. That's when you have Paramount and Fox and Warner Brothers and so on and so forth.
Uncle Carl, as he was known, was a standout in that crowd in that he was considered a decent, compassionate, and delightful person.
As opposed to
I don't need
Jack
to cast aspersions on any of the other moguls.
Yeah, well, Jack Warner was apparently an SOB, right? So it's nice to hear that somebody.
No, but Universal was not only did they really try to elevate the art of movie making, the art of storytelling through film. They were an early pioneer in terms of employing female writers and filmmakers. And much of that disappeared over time. But, at the time, it was quite groundbreaking.
And that was a connection that was evident to me when I watched the documentary of what he did and what you're still doing. In the early 1900s, actors on the stage at the time looked down on filmmaking, didn't want to have anything to do with it. They thought it was beneath them. What Carl did was develop the narrative, and one of the reasons was because he wanted to help all the immigrants coming into the U.S. assimilate into the culture, because he was German. He had come in from Germany, and he sort of had brought in German expressionism and really developed the narrative form, which is what led to things like Frankenstein, which these movies at Universal became known for. I mean, he sort of created the art film business.
Well, I think he created the art film business in the sense that he saw that film was more than just some sort of grotesquerie. It was not the sideshow carnival
Right.
kind of thing, and could be elevated to an art form, in the same respect as other high culture forms of entertainment. So there's no reason why movie going can't aspire to be like opera or great literature.
For example, he later turned the business over to his son, Carl Laemmle Jr. Carl Jr. produced Bride of Frankenstein in 1935, and that was directed by an openly queer director, James Whale, I believe it was.
James Whale, that is correct.
It was a whale of a movie.
It's just interesting to see that your family was pushing boundaries from the very beginning.
Making artistic choices.
You're in the exhibition business here in Los Angeles. You have, how many screens do you have now?
We have 7 locations with 38 screens.
Phil and I went to your NoHo location after a show of just 2-3 weeks ago to see 32 Sounds, a movie you would see nowhere else. And it's a beautiful theater, by the way. It was a big-time family business. Everybody in the family worked for the company. And 2, I believe, nephews, Max and I'm sorry, I forget the other name, came in.
Max and Kurt.
Max and Kurt were sponsored, came into the country just before Nazi Germany took hold, and they started the exhibition business.
Max was my grandfather, and he was the older of the 2 brothers, Max and Kurt, and he was brought over first to work for Universal, probably even in the late 20s, and then sent back to Europe to head up the office in Paris for the distribution of Universal films in Latin America, or Latin Europe, forgive me. Kurt also came over, and then he was sent to Chicago, where he was working in the Chicago branch. Kurt eventually realized that he would actually make a little bit more money working for himself than working for his uncle, and he took over the operation of the Ritz Theater in Lowell, Indiana.
Oh, my goodness, my home state.
And eventually, they started talking. In 1935, we actually have a letter written on the letterhead of the Ritz Theater Corporation in Lowell, Indiana, where they discuss the idea of getting the family out of. Their parents were still in Germany. Wow. And this is a Jewish family. They discussed the idea of getting the parents out and setting up more of an operation together in the States. And that eventually became, in 1938, taking over the operation of 2 neighborhood movie theaters in Highland Park, area of Los Angeles.
The modern day birth of the art house cinema were independent theaters in the late 60s, when things were changing radically with the studio system and the advent of television, and the independent theaters had a fork in the road. Some went the adult film route, exploitation into hardcore. You, as a family, you went in a different direction.
That's correct. We wanted to be in the art film business. My grandfather always believed that American audiences would appreciate, films from all over the world. And we had been in the art business before, and it was just, there was maybe perhaps less competition.
Yes.
Since so many of the theaters transitioned to playing adult. But let's not forget, prior to the explosion of what we would call hardcore films in the U.S., a lot of art films were marketed as adult films. Films from Europe had a more freer version of what was going on, sexually and otherwise. Early Bergman films like Monica were promoted as hardcore films. They had nudity. 8.5. One of my father's good friends at Marshall High School was Catholic, and he would say that every Sunday he went to Mass and heard about, how he was going to hell for seeing the movies that were playing at the Los Feliz Theater.
But going to see movies is a modern day form of church. It is a congregation. It is a collective experience.
It should be. That's right.
It should be. That is correct.
When we talk about independent film, we're not talking about necessarily obscure movies. Here are some of the films that came through the independent film route. Last year, we went to see Everything Everywhere. All at once at the Laemmle Monica before it hit.
That's right.
But other films, Raging Bull, Network, Rocky, Peter Weir, The Last Wave, all his wonderful movies.
Well, look, the art houses bring films and filmmakers and filmmaking technique to the U.S. and filmmakers who live in Los Angeles predominantly, not exclusively, but a lot of them live here, and they go to see these movies, and it informs, the filmmakers that they want to work with, the in front of the camera and behind the camera, and the way in which stories are told. I mean, you can't look at a film like The Matrix, for instance, and not see the influence of Hong Kong, commercial filmmaking that preceded it by a few years.
Yeah, it's true. Ovitz, the famous agent, once said, "Hollywood is high school with money." See, and it should be. It should be a playground, a place for innovative ideas. And
so the Laemmles have become a lifeline to these type of movies. Your family has developed close relationships with some of the finest filmmakers in the world because they have come to rely on the Laemmles to get their movies out there.
Absolutely. And whether it's close personal relationships or just a professional appreciation, look, we want to see these filmmakers reach the widest possible audience with their films. And we just hope that they don't forget their roots. We've seen many filmmakers, quote unquote, sell out and become, make what start out to be very idiosyncratic Hollywood films, but, increasingly become less idiosyncratic. But it's nice to see if some of them return to those indie roots at some time.
Yes, that's right. Now, speaking of roots, were you infused with this family art as a young person, or did you learn it by just watching what your relatives were doing and their success? Were they talking to you about it? How did you make your choice to continue?
Did they raise you in the movie theater?
Yeah, that's right. Did they raise you in a movie?
Well, I was definitely raised in a movie theater, and when we were kids in high school, we all worked at the movie theaters as well.
Oh, you worked there, sure.
So I guess it's education by osmosis. I don't know that it was really inculcated in any kind of organized way. Look, at the end of the day, none of us are really capable of observing our families independently.
True.
But for me, going away to college in the early 80s, when there was still a vibrant repertory cinema scene, especially where I went to school in Berkeley, that became, my film education, going to see 2 and 3 and 4 movies a week, both, Hollywood classics and current and older foreign films. And discovering these films in that setting, and at some point it became clear that as much as my major in marine biology was not going to give me the opportunity to see a lot of movies, and that's what I really loved.
But in many ways, the business is underwater, so there's now the challenge has fallen on you and your generation. The changes that are happening societally, and we're not even talking about COVID yet. How do you see it?
Look, I have faith that audiences will return to moviegoing, that they already are returning to moviegoing, but that there's a segment of the audience that stopped with COVID and has not returned.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
And we're a very impatient society, so we look at that and say, well, COVID's been over for X period of time, and that's a different debate. But if they're not back now, they're never coming back. And it's just, I think it's premature. We've gone through this before, obviously in the late 40s and early 50s with the advent of television. There was a radical realignment of moviegoing, but it returned ultimately because it's really, I feel it satisfies some intrinsic desire to be out in the community, away from our homes with other people, and engage in storytelling in a really deep and meaningful way. There's good TV. Don't get me wrong. I think there's really good TV. But there's a lot of bad TV too. And there's certainly just the impact that it's as convenient as it may be to be able to see something at a whim at your home. You're not getting the experience that you would get if you see it in a movie theater.
That's right.
Well, it is a completely immersive experience, and in that it does allow you to take you out of your daily life, forget your cares. I always found it to be therapeutic to be able to go to a movie theater and forget my life for a couple of hours.
Unless you're watching Psycho.
Right. Or slasher films.
Not going to take a shower.
But I'm looking at the statistics of what I was able to find, and it does show that the business is rebounding, no question. I mean, you can't go much lower than it was in 2020 when the theaters were mandated to be closed. But it looks like people are starting to come back, Gen Zers in particular. Baby boomers are the least of the crowd to come back at this point, which I'm sure is challenging for your market. Who's going to see movies these days?
Well, I think everybody is going to see movies. We're not necessarily giving enough of a variety to really come back in a meaningful way. Films, these are big ocean liners that take a long time to turn around. And the direction was produce films for the streaming platforms and release them straight to the platforms. And, that ended up being, in many respects, a financial failure. And they're, turning around and trying to get product into movie theaters instead of going direct, instead of going direct to the platforms. But it's going to take time, and let's not forget also COVID put in, a big hitch in the movie making process. What we're seeing is that the films that are attracting a big audience are attracting as big an audience as ever. And in many cases, it's across all quadrants. So that, it's not just teenagers going to see Top Gun Maverick, but adults are going to see Top Gun Maverick. But then there may not be another movie that attracts them for quite a while.
Hey, there's always Barbie.
There is Barbie, and there is Oppenheimer, and there's Mission Impossible.
That's right. Yeah,
we're seeing a lot more wide release films in 2023 than we saw in 2022, and certainly than we saw in 2021. So it's heading in the right direction.
Yeah, but again, what you said about streaming, that's one of the reasons why we have a Writers Guild strike right now, and potentially a SAG-AFTRA strike.
Yes,
because the returns are certainly not what I think people expected on that platform.
Well, isn't that true? I mean, just every time there's new technology, the studios have collective amnesia, and decide to just forget all the compensation rules and not apply them to the new technology. And then the rank and file has to go claw back and fight for it. And that's why we're having these strikes.
That's true.
I mean, and that's just going to affect you because the supply chain is going to lessen if these strikes last a long time. It will be down the road, of course, but it will hit nonetheless.
Yes, we have seen that. So that's another challenge
mm-hmm.
that we're going to have to face.
Yeah.
But you sound like you're ready to face it, and I like that, Greg.
I'm stubborn, and I'd like to think that we're survivors.
We're going to talk to Raphael Sbarge momentarily about the documentary he directed about you and your family's survival.
It's a wonderful film.
Yeah, and you really did go through it, as the documentary portrays. In 2019, even before the pandemic was even known to be happening, you went through this very difficult period of selling the theater, selling the business, which was an incredible pressure on you because of the family legacy. Who wants to be the one who sells the family business? What you went through was unbelievable. And yet, despite that reality, you decided to keep it going. And then COVID hits. And then you're told to close down your theaters for, a year? I mean,
we ended up being closed for 13 months, yeah.
And here you are. You've navigated it. But my God, what was that like?
Jury's still out on.
I mean, it got to the point you had to take out personal loans to keep things going. You sold your condo here and moved to Seattle. The personal sacrifice you've made, and
it's a great commitment.
I don't think people realize your personal commitment to keeping Laemmle Theaters going.
Are you getting emotional support or other support from the family or your friends to help you?
Absolutely, and I get emotional support from hearing how much people want us to get through this.
Absolutely.
Now we just need to see it demonstrated in ticket sales.
Box office. Seniors too.
Look, I'm very mindful of the fact that moviegoing, especially among Laemmle moviegoers, is something that is regular. It's that's just part of your week, mm-hmm. not part of your year. Mm-hmm. And it needs to be priced accordingly. And our real challenge is how do we keep moviegoing affordable when everything else is so expensive? There are factors beyond just do people like seeing movies in movie theaters or not, that impact our business. You mentioned traffic. You mentioned the price of housing. How is a young person supposed to see a movie when they can barely afford, to rent and payments on their student loans? So I think there are things we need to deal with, or either we need to deal with them as a society, of course, but any discussion of movie going as a business, as a communal experience, needs to look at all these factors.
One of your sons, and do you have triplets? Are those triplet sons of yours?
We multiplex everything.
That's funny. I'm sure your three sons have been supporting you and pushing you. One of them said you're like a captain on a sinking ship, not because the ship is sinking, but because the water level around you is dropping.
Yeah, well, look, I have to acknowledge that if, I may say I believe in the future of moviegoing. There may be a reality that there is not a future of moviegoing, or that it is, in decline. And emotionally, I'm just going to have to, come to terms with that and not blame myself. But again, I'm not at that place.
Yeah, good.
Not right now.
You were talking about when it might be wise or necessary for you to sort of jump the ship before it's too late, like it was for your ancestors in Germany by getting out of Germany before it was too late in the late 30s. It's interesting because the political climate today here in America,
startlingly similar.
Yeah, you can make some comparisons about that. I mean,
frighteningly.
Have you had any blowback for programming at all at this point yet? I mean, I know you're in Los Angeles, which is a huge help, but this is yet another thing.
Look, I'm, from a Jewish family and practicing, member of the religion, and yet I've been accused of being an anti-Semite because of the films that we play. Wow. Most specifically when we were playing the film Paradise Now, which, looked at two suicide bombers. On the other screen, we were playing Ushpizin, which was a film made within the religious community in Israel. My answer there was, just go see the movie that you want to see and forget about the other one.
Or see the other one and get a different perspective.
Yes, certainly.
What's going on.
So we've been talking about the depressing aspects of this, but
I don't find it depressing. I love being engaged in the community, and I love that we have Los Angeles is so many cultures, so many communities, and so many opportunities, and to be able to provide programming as best as we can to all of those audiences is really what fires me up.
That's what I respect most about the Laemmle Theater chain.
And speaking of which, what movies are coming out that you're going to be presenting to Los Angeles that people should get excited about or at least know about?
Oh, well, first, the Wes Anderson film Asteroid City is going a little wider.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait to see that.
And for those who found French Dispatch to be a little bit
weird,
this is a nice return to form with some real heart in the film. So I'd recommend that. Past Lives is also going to be expanding this week. It's a terrific film, Korean-American experience.
Right.
Starting Friday, we have Desperate Souls, which is a documentary about the making of Midnight Cowboy. The
that sounds
first
great.
and only X-rated film to win the Oscar for Best Picture.
I'll be darned.
Right.
And, coming up, we have a film called A Fire, which is directed by Christian Petzold, who directed films Barbara and Phoenix and Transit. Very fine German filmmaker. It's, again, a terrific picture. And for those who are looking for revival films, the opportunity to see a classic back on the big screen, on July 7th, we're going to be playing Contempt at the Royal.
Is that a noir?
Super saturated, brilliant film by Jean-Luc Godard.
Oh, right.
And when is Barbie opening?
Barbie opens July 21.
It's opening on a
and
screen.
This is a film from Greta Gerwig, who comes out of the indie world, and co-written by Noah Baumbach, also very much rooted within the indie world. So I haven't seen it yet. I'm kind of curious to see it.
Yeah, I think we all are.
There's a way to introduce elements into Hollywood filmmaking that can,
attract an audience,
change people's perspectives on things.
Exactly.
You're listening to Phil and Ted's Sexy Boomer Show. Our special guest today, Greg Laemmle, and you're hearing this on KPFK. If you want to hear all of our shows, you can catch them on our website, sexyboomershow.com. Let us bring on an old friend of yours. Phil, go ahead.
Well, Raphael Sbarge is a brilliant actor, and I've had the joy of working with him, seeing his work at the Antaeus Theater Company, where we were both members. And I was delighted to see that he has branched out into directing, producing, creating this amazing documentary. So I want to talk to him about his decision to do this and how it came about.
Hey, Raphael, you there?
I'm here.
Hey!
Hey, there you are.
Hello.
We appreciate everybody coming in remotely. Raphael, you're in New Jersey, right?
I'm actually in Connecticut at the moment, but on the East Coast.
Wonderful. As you've been listening, we're talking to Greg Laemmle, the subject of your documentary called Only in Theaters, and it chronicles the Laemmle Theaters, literally their fight for survival before and after COVID. And it is available on Amazon, where I rented it. And Kino Lorber is releasing a DVD with lots of extras on July 11th. And there's going to be a screening coming up soon. But we'll talk about that in a moment. But Raphael, fascinating documentary.
Yeah, how did you get engaged and to make this film? What inspired you?
Yeah, I mean, Phil, you and I come from the theater, and obviously it's hallowed ground, and it means it's everything. It's a sacred space, and I about 12 years ago started making some movies, and at some point I had reached out. I was living in LA and reached out to the Laemmle Theaters to see, like many other filmmakers in LA. I mean, if you're an independent filmmaker, the gold standard is that you would show your movie at a Laemmle Theater. That is just the way it is, because it is,
special.
It is synonymous with good taste and quality content. And of course, it doesn't feel like a movie until it actually is shown in a theater. There's something about that magic, that chemistry between the screen and the people in the seats, Phil, for us, of course, on stage, between the actors on stage and the audience who come to share it. It is a community experience. It is a gathering of people in a space that really is aligned around having, enjoying the moment. I called the Laemmle Theaters, and I got Greg Laemmle on the phone, which was sort of astounding to me. It was sort of getting the man above the title, as it were. And Greg was, as you've heard, a wonderful man, loves movies, and really cares about filmmakers, and really extended himself to make it possible. Obviously, he's a good businessman and is very good at what he does in terms of running these theaters. But there was a sort of a sense that there was a willingness to try to make it possible, which is everything as a filmmaker. When you finished your movie, to actually sort of have a warm room, as it were. That led to a series of events that then, of course, really got me to discover the Wall in West LA. If you have the pleasure of going to the Royal, there's a wonderful wall there which really lays out some of the history that you've been speaking about, this incredible sort of legacy story going back to Carl Laemmle and then Kurt and Max. Max is Greg's grandfather, and from there then there's this sense of kind of this family being theater royalty, and I got very taken by the legacy story. That's where we started. From there was literally a series of events that really backed into this.
Raphael, did you start shooting this and talking to Greg and the family before COVID hit?
Oh, of course. Yeah, we were 2019.
Wow. So your timing was right on.
Yeah, I mean, I someone said to me, great job to be able to schedule. I can't believe you had the budget to be able to schedule that pandemic in your third act. I mean, look, the thing is this, because we've traveled now all over the country. We've had international screenings, and I've been in cities that don't know Laemmle Theaters, wouldn't know Laemmle if they stood up in their soup, don't have any context for those of us who live or lived in LA, how important and what a
force,
sort of a giant they are in terms of being a cultural center for so much in Los Angeles. But the fact is that there are theaters like the Laemmle Theaters in every city that we went to.
Yes.
There are theaters that maybe they don't have the legacy and the incredible story that Greg and Max and Carl and all of that, but they do have theaters that are art house cinemas that are dedicated to showing films that are important, that don't have superheroes in them,
and
that are really appeal to our intelligence and to our heart and to a different sensibility.
It's a lot like,
and they're all dealing with some challenges.
It's a lot like the Firesign Theater. You attract an audience because nobody else is doing something that respects their intelligence and respects their sense of history and their artistic side, and that it makes it attracts an audience of exalted people, in my estimation.
What motivated you to do this? I mean, your whole family was involved. Tish, your lovely wife, she added such an interesting element to the story because she was able to talk about what you were personally going through physically over the stress that you probably wouldn't have spoken of yourself. What was your motivation for doing this movie?
Well, when we started, it was... I was very proud of having a 3-generation family business and telling that story. Recently, the Lincoln Plaza Cinemas in New York had shut down.
Yeah.
And, arguably the most important art house movie theater in the country, or maybe the world. Mm-hmm. And it's just incredible that the Upper West Side of Manhattan could not have a movie theater. And I was proud of the fact that the way we had structured things, that wasn't going to, be the case for LA. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to tell that story. And frankly, also at a time when immigration was being discussed in this country, I wanted to really tell a story about how immigration has been a huge positive impact for our country and certainly for the state.
All the arts, really.
Sunset 5 was one of your premier locations on Sunset Boulevard. That closed down. AMC took over. Didn't do well, evidently. They closed down. And now Landmark, which I guess could be technically a competitor to yours, but I mean, in a business like this, I would imagine they're not so much competitors as they're fellow soldiers in the battle here. They lost their location. They had a beautiful place on Overland and Pico.
Oh, I used to go to that theater all the time.
Well, now they're evidently taking over what was Sunset 5, and that's going to be their new home.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm super happy to see that's happened.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So
wish them luck.
So in the remaining time we have, well, first of all, I want to talk about if you're interested in seeing the documentary Only in Theaters, that our guest Raphael Sbarge has directed about our other guest, Mr. Greg Laemmle. It will be showing at another institution that is rising like a
phoenix.
Phoenix through the ashes, Vidiot's. Now, Vidiot's is a filmmaker's video rental store. It has been celebrated as that for decades. They were in Santa Monica for many years, but it didn't last. But they maintained they became a nonprofit, and they maintained their catalog, and they have now reopened in Eagle Rock. They took over an old Pussycat Theater. They have 2 theaters there, and they have a tremendous collection of movies on physical media, DVDs and Blu-ray. And
surprisingly, they're doing good business.
Great. They're doing the best business since 1985, they told us today. So
it's like the revival of vinyl recordings.
Yes. We'll be showing Only in Theaters on July 8th. So
and for what it's worth, Greg and I and Tish, Greg's wife, are all flying in for the event, and we'll be there for the Q&A after.
Oh wow!
Oh boy!
Fantastic! So you're all going to be at this location. So
yes, we live in person.
Wow! Yeah. Okay, so that is on July 8th at the brand new Vidiot's Video Store, which you should see anyway, just to see a remarkable collection of movies. And also, Only in Theaters, your documentary is going to be released on DVD with lots of extras by Kino Lorber on July 11th. So you've got a lot of stuff coming up.
Yeah, look, this is Greg Greg and really the family really opened themselves up to telling the story in a very personal way.
That's right.
We have played all over the country, and we were a critical success. And I'm grateful for that. We played 80 theaters, so the movie really, called only in theaters, really played only in
That's
theaters.
wonderful.
It didn't just play only on streaming. But now it's into that next stage where while we have the Vidiots screening, which is obviously our preference, it will be available to a wider audience now on streaming, which is great.
Yeah.
But it's been an amazing journey, and I believe that the film really it captures a moment, but it is really about speaks to larger questions about where we're headed.
Yes.
The importance of theaters. What do we gain, and what do we potentially lose if we don't have them? I mean, this news about the taper shook me when I read it.
Sure.
Just took me down on my knees, because I've worked there many times, and I just can't believe. I can't even imagine. So we're in sort of extraordinary times, and the opportunity to really to consider what these theaters bring, their cultural institutions, and how much they inform every part of our lives. This is a call back to be reminded that going to theaters is really a special and wonderful thing to do.
It's a call for action.
Greg,
it's a call to action, exactly.
Greg, in the minute we have left, you are the eternal optimist. You are not giving up. You are determined to keep cinema, theatrical experiences alive, at least here in Los Angeles. A word of optimism as to what's driving you right now. What can we hope for in your line of work?
Look, I mean, I'm driven by the idea that people recognize at some point when they're being fed stuff that isn't good for them.
Yes.
And return to their, to being smart. We can only be fooled for so long. And as long as there are opportune places like the Vidiots Theater in Eagle Rock that are reopening and continuing to provide films. Yes, there are going to be theaters that close. I get that. Some of them are going to be my theaters that close in the days to come. But when you see a new theater opening up, when you see a community coming together to support providing this opportunity, it deserves our support. It deserves our mention. And if you really care about it, you'll go and see a movie there.
Yeah, go with some friends,
Greg Laemmle, Raphael Sbarge.
It's a listener-supported station.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, sexyboomershow.com.
Great to hear your voice, Raphael.
And,
Phil, thanks for having us.
And also support your local cinema. We'll be back next week with another show on Phil and Ted's Sexy Boomer Show. I'm Ted Bonnet.
I'm Phil Proctor. Keep us on the air.
Stay
tuned.